I don't know if that's a good segue into like talking about how people could potentially prepare for what's coming, because
Sure.
honestly, a concern that I've heard other people voice to the younger generation, the older, wiser folks, is that we've never really seen a massive economic downturn apart from 2008. Most of
Sure.
us, we haven't
Right.
necessarily seen things go terribly, terribly bad,
Right.
like the 2000 or
Mm-hmm.
like before that, or
The one in the 80s.
the 80s. I wasn't even born, right?
One
So
in
like,
the mid 90s.
yeah, so we don't know
Yeah.
anything. Honestly, we don't know what it's like right now. We've all we've seen in our entire childhood has been a massive shift in technological boom. Basically,
Sure.
all the money dollars, everything's going there. I have a career out of that, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like that's where everything's going. So we've
Yeah.
only seen growth.
Right.
Honestly, 2008 was a hiccup. But I don't know. Like I know my personal family was definitely affected by it, but
Sure.
like in the grand scheme of things, that was not even that bad.
Well, I think it's my impression is that the drop in the S&P was comparable, not as much as, but like it's only second to the depression.
Yeah.
And so the point is that if you,
But the recovery wasn't
yeah, the recovery wasn't as
like
bad.
it was like 30 days later or
They took
90
it
days later.
easier.
It was
Yeah.
like, okay, we're like going
Yeah,
on
we're
the
starting to
climb.
go the other way,
Yeah.
right?
So
And then, of course, they call it a beautiful deleveraging if the credit markets restore themselves in a way that's optimized. Anybody
beautiful
who,
deleveraging.
yeah, anybody who really wants to know this should watch Ray Dalio's "How the Economy Works." You can
Yeah,
YouTube
Ray
it.
Dalio has
It's
some
a
good
30-minute video, and it
yeah,
is. I got it. For the longest time, I couldn't understand because I would look at economics. And I go,
yeah,
why is it that if I give Abhinav $1 and he
yeah.
gives $1 to say his landlord, oh, there's only so many dollars. How can we possibly have booms and busts if there's only so many dollars to be had? And I found out by watching his work that that's just not true. We create debits all the time. Every time I use a credit card, I've literally magically made a debit where there is no dollar there
Yeah.
tied to it.
I've said I owe you.
Yeah,
Right.
it's an IOU, right?
Yeah.
And if you add up the amount of how much outstanding debts there are compared to the actual amount of dollars, I thought he said it was like 9-1 or something. It might even be worse. The debts
That's
goes
how
way
much
up.
we've like
We are exceeding the number
spend
of
without
dollars.
having.
Yeah, so like let's say let's just make up a number.
So
Let's say,
so the
yeah.
global economy is just a teenager that doesn't know how to control money.
Quite apt, yes.
Yeah.
And so eventually, he said, eventually you pretty much have to pay the bill. Some people will start losing their jobs, and the system starts to fall down like
Yeah.
a series of dominoes. And so this is why we've always had booms and busts as long as we've had the type of modern economics where we've credit markets.
Oh.
Without credit markets, you wouldn't have the people incurring the debits.
Well, we keep raising our debt ceiling. Is that the correct terminology?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so what that basically means, from my understanding, is that we're essentially saying, so we have X amount of debt. We obviously can't pay it off.
Right.
Why don't we just increase how much we have, so we can keep spending?
Do you mean
Because we're gonna have to pay it off anyway.
increase the amount of debt we have?
The debt ceiling,
Sure.
so how much more we can keep
Yeah.
spending without having to pay it back, right?
Right.
So why do we do that, and how can we keep doing that?
The problem is that if you borrow money at a low interest rate, it's like economic gasoline on the engine. You can use the money that you've borrowed to do something with, right?
Okay.
So we will incur debts to other countries all the time, and they incur debts to us. Each of us owes each other money, and so you hope that if you keep stimulating the economy with this in the right way and in the appropriate amount, the economy will be healthy.
Right.
If you have an idea to go start a business and you have no money, it could take you a long time to build up to that point. If you have the idea to start a business and someone says, I'll give you a nice low interest loan so you can get started,
Yeah.
then I can stimulate growth in a way I couldn't before. My impression is, although I've never checked this, the problem is not the actual amount of debt you have. It should be debt compared to your GDP, meaning a tiny country might not produce very much, so they shouldn't have as much debt.
Right.
And so you can see how over leveraged they are, meaning how much if they've taken out too much money and they can't ever pay you back. It's kind of like one of those really high risk loans.
So what happens to those countries?
So far as I know, they get restructured the debt. I don't know I think the country, if it had to, would say it defaults.
Like, is that what happened to Greece?
The Greeks were defaulting on, some of their debts, I think, to the European Union. I think they were supposed to pay a certain amount of money into the European Union and did not. And that created, I guess they called it the Greek Eurozone crisis.
Gotcha.
There's a question of, well, if somebody doesn't pay back their debts. Now, of course, we're talking at a super macro level, a lot of which I don't know a lot about
Right.
yet. But we're talking at this really high level of like, this is the whole world's economy. But the same thing is repeated on smaller scales all the time. States borrow from other states, cities issue municipal bonds. And then down at the local level, you have something like, banks that'll give you a certain amount of money and then you can put it in stocks or houses or whatever. And so all this is the same cycle of people borrowing and paying back, taking at bigger and bigger levels over the course of, according to Ray, about 8 years.
So
It
what?
was 8 to
So
13
now
years.
tell me, what is it that you think is happening based on, and to anybody listening, anything we're talking about, we're not advising you to do anything with your money. We're simply just having a conversation.
Yeah,
We're not.
neither of us are pros. We're
Yeah,
not
neither of
licensed or
us is a
certified.
licensed
Anything.
financial advisor.
Yeah, I'm
Definitely
telling you
not
what
me.
I think for me, and you do what you want
Yeah,
for
do
you.
what you want. Make your assessment.
Like
And that's
Tony
fair.
Robbins said, I'm not your guru. Do what you want.
Yeah, do what you want to do. All right. So what do you think is going on? Like, let's have
Yeah.
a little bit more about
Okay,
that.
so we know the cycle goes up for a certain amount of time, and then at some certain point, you can't borrow any more money. Meaning the company goes, hey, you're not bringing in enough to pay back your current debts. Some of the companies will then start to go into default, which causes the market to go downward. Companies go into default, they lay off the workers. The workers get laid off, they won't buy more stuff.
Sure.
Now, of course, now we're starting on like a roller coaster. It's reinforcing itself going down because now they won't buy more stuff at other places. The other places also can't pay their debts. And now they go out of business. And it's like this chain reaction. And so that's normal. This happens all the time. Ray points out in the video that these are boom and bust cycles. I could never figure out when I was younger how it is, because I remember being in the recession in the 90s and in the early 2000s
Right.
and going, how in the world is it? Like, we still have a certain number of dollars in the world. I said that now I know that's not true. It's the actual debts with interest on them
keep
that are
creating
being
them.
messed up. Yeah, they're created, as he puts it, out of thin air. Yeah, it's brilliant. He's so brilliant.
He's
really
one of the
helped me
richest men
understand.
in the world, right?
Oh yeah, he started Bridgewater Associates, the hedge fund.
$18.6 billion.
Yeah, one of the richest guys on the entire planet.
And he's a financial guy through
Yep.
and through.
He started his hedge fund literally out of his 2-bedroom apartment with no money.
Amazing. Incredible.
Yeah, and he's really good. When he talks, I really go, he's got a lot to say.
How do you counter him with somebody like a Warren Buffett?
Well,
Or are they? I mean, they're parallel.
yeah, Buffett is more of a buy and hold long-term investor. He's looking
Right.
for companies that he thinks will go up or down based upon
People
what they've
perception,
people
long term.
perception and long-term things like fundamental indicators. Like, do they just not have? Do they have too many competitors? Are they not able to bring in enough revenue because of some licensing issue or whatever?
Sure.
Dalio, as a hedge fund manager, is trying to go for short-term grabs. Like, he'll look for shorter-term profits.
Okay.
But in order to do this, he says you have to be going against what everybody else thinks is going to happen, and you have to be right more than you're wrong. I mean, he goes, if everybody else is watching the stock market go down, you're waiting until there's blood in the streets, then you buy, because that's when it's going to start going back up again. You have to run contrary to what other people are thinking and be right.
So, ethically, it's kind of silly because it's like it's like the have versus the have-nots, right?
Sure.
People are always trying to,
Yeah.
we're almost like gaming other human beings.
Yeah.
The lesser sort of people that are more frivolous and maybe not necessarily of higher conscientiousness and understanding their behavior patterns and just being fools to mass marketing.
Right. You sit there and go, you're like, is that fair? I don't know what else to do
I don't
about it. I've
know.
thought about economic systems
So
for
what
a while.
do you do? Do you suffer too? Like, I mean, So
Do I join them?
Yeah,
Yeah,
do I
exactly.
join them?
Is the
Should
world
I
better?
suffer? And then you also think about, well, should I help these people by giving them money? Is
Yeah.
that the way to do it? I don't
And then
think
are
so.
they going to make the same decision they just made, and they're going
Yeah.
to lose that money? Sure.
Well, so I mean, I
Pretty
think
complex question.
it's a very complex question, not a straightforward answer. But with that said, though,